we need to talk about a new study that's just come out. It's a really startling look at the future of the Atlantic Ocean's coral reefs, and honestly, the findings are a huge climate warning. They're predicting an almost total collapse, maybe even within our lifetime. So let's just dive right into the data and see what's going on.
Look, this study pulls absolutely no punches. So to really get the gravity of this, we're going to start with its single most powerful conclusion. It's a quote that really sets the stage for everything else we're about to cover.
Just let that sink in for a second. That's not my words, that's a direct quote from the research. And when they say succumb to erosion, they mean the reefs themselves. Their very structures could just crumble and wash away. We're not talking about some corals here and there. We're talking about virtually all of them. A total system-wide collapse. To put a number on virtually all, it's 99%. The study projects that a staggering 99% of Atlantic corals are facing this exact fate. I mean, that's basically a total loss. And it's all tied to one single crucial factor: how much warmer our planet gets. And you know, this isn't just speculation or some wild guess. This conclusion comes from a massive analysis. They looked at over 400 coral reefs all across the Atlantic. It's one of the most comprehensive forecasts of its kind, and that's exactly why we have to take it so seriously.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this warning, we have to dig into the numbers a little bit. What is the science actually telling us about why this is happening?
Here's our starting point. This is where we are right now. The planet has already warmed by about 1.3 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial times. You're going to want to remember that number, 1.3 degrees, because it's the first key piece of this whole puzzle. This slide really just lays it all out, doesn't it? We're at 1.3 degrees of warming today. The study identifies 2 degrees as the absolute critical tipping point. If we go beyond that, the ocean just gets too warm and too acidic for corals to even build their skeletons. That's when you see the widespread bleaching and death. As you can see, there is not a lot of wiggle room before we cross that catastrophic line.
Now, let's look at the timeline, because the study doesn't just predict if this is going to happen, it gives us a pretty stark forecast of when.
This timeline makes the threat feel incredibly real and incredibly close. We're here, today, at 1.3 degrees of warming. The analysis projects that by 2040, and that's just over 15 years from now, over 70% of the Atlantic's reefs will start dying. Then, by 2100, if we cross that 2-degree threshold, that number jumps all the way to 99%.
And here's the part that is really tough to swallow. That 2040 prediction? That's not the worst-case scenario. The researchers found that over 70% of reefs are likely to start dying by then, even under the most optimistic climate models, where we do a great job curbing emissions. It suggests a ton of this damage is, well, it's already locked in.
So this is obviously devastating for the corals, but what does it actually mean for the rest of the planet? And for us? Why does the fate of these underwater worlds matter so much?
The study uses 2 really powerful metaphors to explain their role. Corals are the building blocks of marine ecosystems. They are the literal foundation for so much ocean life. And at the same time, they're bulwarks, which is basically a fancy word for a defensive wall that protects our coastlines. You take away the building blocks, and the whole structure starts to fall apart.
And their importance is just immense. They provide homes for thousands upon thousands of species. In fact, an incredible 1/4 of all life in the ocean depends directly on coral reefs. And on top of that, they act like natural breakwaters, shielding coastal communities from big storm surges and erosion. And that brings us to the human number. According to NOAA, more than 1 billion people around the world rely on coral reefs. That's for food, for jobs in fishing and tourism, and for that critical protection for their homes. 1 billion people. So you see, when we're talking about losing corals, it's not just about losing a beautiful underwater world. We're talking about a massive ecological crisis that is going to directly trigger a human crisis, affecting the safety and the livelihoods of people on a truly global scale. All of this brings us to the core message of the study, and it leaves us with one final, unavoidable question. The scientists behind this research have been very clear. They are framing their work as a warning. It's like a fire alarm for the ocean. The data is here, the timeline has been laid out, so the question it forces all of us to ask is simple, but it's also incredibly profound. What happens next if we choose to ignore it?